most of us hearing this story or who have heard this story before are saying, oh, poor elephants, they grow up and they have no idea that their reality, what they believe is real, has nothing to do with the actuality of them being big enough to move those stumps. But what we're really talking about here, with the example of the elephants, is you in your life. Those beliefs which you hold, which are a limit to you, plague our lives. They are to blame for the lives that we're living, which are less than what we want them to be. Today, if you haven't caught on already, what we're going to be talking about is how to change a belief. The first key to changing your beliefs is to change the way you think about beliefs and the way you think about reality. If you think about your beliefs and reality as if it is fixed, then it does not contain the natural flexibility which will allow you to change beliefs. So what is a belief? A belief basically is a thought which you keep thinking, so much so that that creates a very strong frequency within this universe, and that frequency, when it collapses wave function into the third dimensional understanding that we call physical reality, you are now looking at proof. So you're thinking a thought which you have thought so often that it is now manifested as physical proof. Now that you are looking at the physical proof, that then strengthens what we would call a belief, which is basically a thought which is backed up by confidence, backed up by faith, trust, and acceptance. We could call a belief an assumed truth or an assumed reality. This is not to be confused with an objective truth or a fixed reality. Really, beliefs are basically only the best available explanation that we have based on the evidence that we have been observing in our physical life. Beliefs can and should be changed if they are a detriment to you instead of a benefit to you. The only beliefs which we should be holding and maintaining in our lives are the beliefs which are a benefit to us. Especially because, in order to manifest things into our reality, the frequency of our desire and the frequency of our belief must be an exact match. An example of this would be, if you have the desire for a perfect relationship, but you have the belief that you don't deserve perfect relationships, the relationship you want cannot show up for you. In order for a perfect relationship to show up in your life, your desire for that perfect relationship and the belief that you deserve it must line up, and then you will experience the manifestation. For some, using hypnosis or subliminal programming may be something which feels good to do at the time, and you may want to try to do it if it's being something which is supplemented with intentional change. There's nothing wrong with trying this modality of changing your beliefs. It can be a benefit to people sometimes. But in my opinion, our greatest empowerment, our greatest freedom, and our greatest joy is served by consciously, deliberately changing our beliefs and becoming the deliberate creators of our own lives and realities. The first step to changing a belief is to identify what that belief is. This can potentially mean chasing a core belief, which I have gone into in my video, my Is Teal video on shadow work, if any of you would like to refer to that. The reason that you want to find out what your deep, what we could call a root belief is because you could say something, have a thought like, I hate speaking in public. That thought is not a core belief. What that is an emotional reaction to a core belief. A core belief such as, I'm not good enough. You always want to be working with the root belief when you're dealing with changing your beliefs, because it's kind of like a weed. All of us who understand gardening know that if you don't pull up the root of a weed, the weed will just keep growing back and keep growing back. So dealing with a thought like, I hate speaking in public, would be like dealing with the branch of a weed, whereas dealing with the core belief, I'm not good enough, would be really changing the root of that weed. Simply identifying what a belief is shining light on that belief, which decreases their chokehold on you. This is because the vibration of being inside a belief is different than the vibration of looking at a belief. For example, it is a different vibration to truly believe, I am not good enough, than it is to say, I am now looking at that thought which is cropped up, which is, I am not good enough. In one, you are in the vibration of observing. In one, you are in the actual belief. So just identifying the belief decreases the vibration that they have, thus decreases the ability of that belief to manifest into your reality. 2. Examine the belief which you held. We're talking about this negative belief. The only people who have a right to the beliefs which they hold are the people who question and decide on those beliefs, not the people who pick them up by default or experience. We could call this non-deliberate beliefs. You really ought to deliberately choose the beliefs you hold. And take your teeth out of truth. This is what people who are justifying their own beliefs like to do. They like to act as if truth exists outside of a person. And in order to change your beliefs, you've got to pull your teeth out of the idea of some kind of truth which exists separate from you. In your subjective reality, let's pretend that truth does not exist, because everything is subjective. So a belief is not true or false. That's where we need to begin. Beliefs are not true or false. They are either beneficial or detrimental. That is the only thing you have to decide about your beliefs. My belief is neither true nor false. It is either beneficial or detrimental to me. You need to make a list of how it is beneficial to you and a list of how it is detrimental to you. And then you need to decide if it's more beneficial or more detrimental. Once you make your decision, it'll usually be detrimental, decide what you would rather believe. So let your non-beneficial beliefs be your inspiration towards beliefs which you want to believe. 4. Determine the emotions that are holding you to the belief like superglue, because of the payoff that that belief is creating for you. For example, if I believe that I'm not good enough, if I'm being very honest about the emotional payoff, it might look something like, I get pity when I feel like I'm not good enough and when I express that to somebody, and that pity feels like people care about me. Or, when I think thoughts like, I'm not good enough, I give up the responsibility of having to try something new. We have to decide whether the emotional payoff is worth the limitations of the beliefs which we're holding. Nothing will help anybody to change something that they don't want to change. So the first step really, which we are calling the 4th step, is really decide whether you want to change that belief or not. That dedication is going to help unglue the superglue of the emotional payoff, which is keeping you tied to that belief. And once you decide that you really want to change a belief, and that superglue starts to get weak, the belief begins to get weak as well. I was at a seminar once when I heard probably the best analogy when we're talking about beliefs that I have ever heard. It was comparing beliefs to a tabletop. So the tabletop is a belief, like let's call it a negative belief, and the legs of that table is the experiences and the evidence which we are using to back up that belief. And the emotions, what I was just talking about, the emotional payoff, is like the superglue holding the legs of that table to the floor. So what we need to do is first decrease the strength of the superglue, which is the emotions, then knock out the legs of the table, which is the evidence that we are using to support the belief, and then the belief will fall, and it can be replaced. So step 5, after we have decreased the emotional superglue, is to figure out an alternative explanation. Replace basically the evidence, which we are using to back up our belief, the legs of the table, with new evidence. So you need to find an alternative explanation and find alternative evidence for your belief by playing devil's advocate, or maybe we should say playing the angel's advocate. For example, you could start with a belief like, I'm not good enough. And obviously that may be backed up by this kind of evidence. I may have been for my whole life perpetuating this by saying, My father always told me that I wasn't good enough with his actions and potentially even with his words. So an alternate explanation may be something like this. My father has a very self-conscious way of being. He's petrified of embarrassment. And so I made mistakes, and that was an embarrassment to him. And I can explain this by saying he was the one who felt as if he wasn't good enough. I simply adopted this belief. When in truth, mistakes don't make anybody not good enough. Mistakes are just a part of learning. So this kind of reframing of all of the evidence you're using to support your beliefs is really what is going to take the strength away from that belief which you've been holding for so long. You want to reframe every single bit of evidence and proof that you are using to back up any belief you don't want to have anymore. Play the devil's advocate or the angel's advocate and replace those with new ways of looking at the situation, a completely new point of view. 6. Look for new evidence of your new belief. I talk in a lot of my videos about the fact that the brain is a scientist, so you can use it as the scientist that it is and send it out on a scavenger hunt for new proof. Once you focus on the evidence or the proof to back up a new belief, more of those proof and those experiences will be flowing into your experience. As per the law of attraction, this is just how it works. You will start off looking for proof, and it will snowball into your experience until you're sitting in an entirely different reality. An example would be, how am I good enough? I've had successes. You can list them. I have worth, which is innate. The things that I have to say could really benefit other people. You want to look for as much evidence and as much proof as is humanly possible. Go on a total scavenger hunt for it. Make it your focus. Read articles about whatever you want your new belief to be, and books, and movies, anything that reinforces the new belief. You want to make your focus. 7. Use affirmations correctly. Affirmations don't really work for people the way that they have been taught to you, because when you have a belief like I'm not good enough that has been backed up by years and years and years and years of proof, when you say something like I am good enough, suddenly it contradicts your own sense of intelligence and it sounds to you like a lie. So it makes you more aware of where you aren't than closing the gap between where you are and where you want to be. So we need to back up a little bit and be incremental, and for lack of a better word, we need to place stepping stones on our road to closing the gap between where we are and where we want to be. So for example, we could say I am not good enough. Now if you replace that with an affirmation like I am good enough, you're going to feel your whole body back up from that emotionally because you don't actually believe that. But you can find things which are vibrationally on the way to closing that gap between I am not good enough and I am good enough by coming up with things you actually do believe which are on the way to the belief that I am good enough. So, for example, instead of I am not good enough, you could think I'm a captivating person. If that's something I truly do believe, and it's an incremental step towards I am good enough, that is the thought you want to be using as an affirmation. I have valuable things to share with people, is another example. And eventually, once you start practicing, incrementally practicing, beliefs which are closer and closer to the vibration of I am good enough, which you actually do believe, then pretty soon that gap will be closed. You will say I am good enough, and you will believe it. It is all too common in the world that we have today for people to be living lives which they think are not up to par with their own happiness. You watch people complaining about the way their life is. You watch people who are really holding them back with these beliefs which they have about themselves and about the life that they live. And they don't really want to take responsibility, nor do they usually know what is creating the life which they are living, because they think that reality is fixed. They think basically that they come here and they're a part of a reality and bad things can happen to them without invitation, without focus. The problem is that that just is not correct. The way this universe is meant to run is that it is meant to become the reflection of your thoughts and your beliefs. If you are living a life which is anything less than satisfactory and joyful, It is because your focus, your thoughts, and thus your beliefs are not up to par with your desires. They are not in alignment with who you really are. And they are not in alignment with what feels good to think. So if you want your life to be different, in any way, shape, or form, you have got to change the story that you're telling about your life. You have got to change the thoughts which you're thinking. And when you change the thought that you're thinking, it will change the way that your reality is structuring itself. And then your beliefs about your reality will change. And everyone will stand in amazement wondering how it is that you have created this life of so much bliss and freedom for yourself. And you can turn around and say, it's because I took the initiative to change my thoughts that I was thinking on a daily basis. And I took the initiative to change my own beliefs. And when I did that, my reality shifted to become the exact reality which I wanted. I deliberately created it for myself. It's possible for you all to do this. And it's possible from the space that you're in right now, because your only axis of power is right here where you stand. So I hope this helps you. Have a good week.